So Jimmy Kimmel was doing it. He was doing it too.
Yeah, he was doing it too.
Yeah. No, he was being accused of joking about it too.
Yes. So they were upset at him, even though he was attacking the appropriate person. He was doing it in a manner which is also construed as being transphobic. Like they were saying that his tweet is transphobic. He's a comic.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, he used to host the Man Show. I mean, he's done some pretty outrageous shit back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, for hee-hees and haw-haws.
No, that's a good joke on top of a good joke.
Yeah, it's a good joke. Funny thing to say. He's had a real problem with Elon from the beginning of this thing, but it's like he's in this leftist thought bubble. He is in the most leftist thought bubble available.
Imagine this. Jimmy Kimmel, the guy who once pushed every boundary on the Man Show, is now under fire from his own audience. All over a single joke at Elon Musk's expense. How did the fearless comedian turn into a cautionary tale for late-night TV? And more importantly, what does this meltdown say about the future of comedy itself? Stay tuned, because what you're about to see might change the way you think about free speech and entertainment forever. Let's talk about Jimmy Kimmeland, not in that funny late-night host sense we're used to. This is about a full-blown career meltdown, a very public clash with Elon Musk. And even Joe Rogan calling him out for a level of hypocrisy that's become impossible to ignore. We're diving into free speech, cancel culture, and the dramatic shift of a once razor-sharp comedian into someone who now leans heavily on political commentary instead of pure comedy. Flashback a bit. Jimmy Kimmel didn't start out as the polished, politically careful figure we see on ABC today. He co-hosted The Man Show, a program built on edgy, boundary-pushing humor where no topic was off. Back then, Kimmel wasn't tiptoeing around Twitter mobs or worrying about identity politics, he just went for laughs. Whether you loved him or found him outrageous, the guy was fearless, unapologetic, and hilarious. That boldness is what earned him a spot in the late-night spotlight. That raw comedic energy, that's what made him a star. Fast forward to today. And the contrast between the Jimmy Kimmel of the past and the Jimmy Kimmel of the present is nothing short of staggering. The Kimmel who co-hosted The Man Show, a program built on irreverence, boundary-pushing humor, and unapologetic mockery, would likely look at his current persona and barely recognize the man on stage. Back then, Kimmel thrived on audacity. His comedy was sharp, fearless, and free from the invisible chains of political correctness. He could lampoon anyone from celebrities to politicians, from cultural trends to societal norms without fear of immediate backlash from a hyper-vigilant online audience. That fearless comedic energy was the foundation of his rise to stardom. He wasn't beholden to sponsors, woke mobs, or social media outrage. He was beholden only to the laughter of his audience. It was a simpler time, at least by the standards of the modern entertainment landscape, where comedians could take risks without being vilified for every word, tweet, or punchline. Today, however, Kimmel's brand of comedy has transformed dramatically. The man who once skewered everything and everyone now seems tethered to a tightly scripted, politically conscious narrative. The monologues that once flowed with irreverent wit have been replaced with carefully calibrated statements designed to align with progressive talking points. Punchlines are increasingly rare, replaced by commentary that often feels less like humor and more like a sermon or lecture. Instead of challenging ideas with jokes that invite reflection and laughter, Kimmel's current persona often delivers critiques intended to signal virtue to a specific segment of his audience. He is no longer a provocateur of comedy for comedy's sake. He is, in many ways, a mouthpiece for the ideological expectations of the moment. Ironically, the very audience he now attempts to court with these politically loaded monologues is far from uniform in its support. This fragmented, hyperpolarized audience can be unforgiving, and any perceived misstep of a minor one can trigger intense backlash. One of the clearest examples of this phenomenon is his now infamous Twitter exchange with Elon Musk. Musk, known for his provocative, often trolling humor, posted a tweet reading, "My pronouns are prosecute Fauci." It was classic Musk. A blend of trolling, sharp commentary, and an unmistakable meme-worthy quality that both amuses and irritates people simultaneously. Too many, it was harmlessly funny, a clever way to make a point while provoking reactions online. Kimmel, perhaps viewing the tweet as an opportunity to strike back in his late-night persona, responded with, "Your pronouns are asshole." On its surface, the retort was edgy, pointed, and arguably funny. It landed as a comeback in the traditional sense, the kind of response one might expect in the arena of internet humor. But what happened next highlighted the impossible tightrope that modern comedians must now walk. Kimmel's own woke followers erupted on social media, accusing him of transphobia for even joking about pronouns in the first place. Context was irrelevant. Nuance was discarded. The joke was aimed squarely at Elon Musk and his provocative, intentionally annoying social media behavior, not at the trans community. Yet the backlash was swift and severe, demonstrating just how little room there is today for layered, context-dependent humor. This episode is not just about a single joke, it is emblematic of the broader challenges that comedians face in the contemporary cultural environment. The very mechanisms that Kimmel once exploited to gain attention and acclaim it, rage, audacity, and fearless commentary, have now been weaponized against him. Social media has amplified every misstep, and the online mobs, empowered by a culture of performative morality, have become an unpredictable and relentless force. Comedians like Kimmel, who once thrived in this environment, now find themselves constrained by the very tools that once elevated them. The result is a precarious position where humor must constantly navigate a minefield of potential offense, misinterpretation, and ideological policing. Moreover, this scenario underscores a fundamental shift in the relationship between comedians and their audiences. In the past, the audience's role was largely passive. They laughed, they applauded, and their approval or disapproval was communicated through ratings or ticket sales. Today, audiences are active participants, empowered by social media to demand accountability, interpret intent, and publicly call out perceived missteps. The lines between consumer, critic, and enforcer have blurred, creating an environment where comedians are continuously scrutinized in real time. Every joke carries the risk of being dissected, decontextualized, and weaponized as evidence of moral failure. Kimmel's Twitter spat with Musk also reveals the contradictions inherent in his current approach. For years, he has positioned himself as a champion of progressive ideals. Aligning his comedy with what he perceives to be the moral high ground, he has mocked, ridiculed, and criticized figures who challenge these norms, signaling loyalty to a set of ideological expectations. Yet, when the dynamics shift and he becomes the target of the same scrutiny, the reaction is a public struggle to defend himself while maintaining his carefully curated persona. The result is a striking illustration of the double-edged nature of ideological comedy. By feeding the cancel culture machine, one inevitably risks being consumed by it. The lesson here is stark and unavoidable. The cancel culture mob is insatiable, and once a public figure begins to play by its rules, there is no guarantee of immunity. The very audience that Kimmel courted through years of carefully positioned virtue signaling can turn at any moment, often for reasons that are minor, nuanced, or purely symbolic. The online culture of outrage is not governed by proportionality or fairness. It is governed by visibility, amplification, and performative accountability. And Kimmel, who once wielded humor as a weapon, now finds humor itself constrained by the weaponization of social scrutiny. Beyond the immediate implications for Kimmel, this episode reflects a broader transformation in the entertainment landscape. Comedians, writers, and performers must now navigate a world in which the boundaries of acceptable humor are not static but are continually renegotiated by vocal segments of the public. The rise of social media as both a platform and a tribunal has fundamentally altered the power dynamics between creators and audiences. Whereas previously the success of a joke might be measured in laughter or applause, today it can be measured in retweets, shares, and the intensity of backlash. Context and intent, once central to the evaluation of humor, are increasingly secondary to perception and reaction. For Jimmy Kimmel, this environment has created an impossible paradox. He has spent years cultivating a persona aligned with progressive ideals, a persona that depends on a particular kind of audience approval. At the same time, the mechanics of modern social engagement mean that any deviation, even one as minor as a tweet in response to Elon Musk, can provoke intense criticism. The comedian who once thrived on risk-taking now finds that risk itself has become a liability. The very traits that made him successful, audacity, sharpness, irreverence, are now constrained by a culture that prizes ideological alignment over comedic merit. In short, the Twitter episode with Musk is more than just a momentary clash between two high-profile figures. It is a case study in the evolving nature of comedy, audience dynamics, and public discourse. It illustrates how cultural, technological, and ideological forces have converged to create an environment in which comedians must navigate unprecedented pressures. For Kimmel, the consequences are immediate and personal: backlash from followers, criticism from media, and the erosion of the freedom that once defined his craft. The lesson is clear: The comedy that thrives in a free and dynamic environment cannot survive indefinitely in one constrained by performative morality and instantaneous judgment.
Of self-censorship and the idea of being a more empathetic person is a good thing, right? But as long as it's reasonable. But the thing is, the problem with that kind of stuff is it continues to go in the same direction where more and more things become forbidden and toxic, to the point where, you know, the Elon Musk joking around about my pronouns are prosecute Fauci. Jimmy Kimmel made a tweet back to him. He said, your pronouns are ass and hole, which is pretty funny. But then
Did he really?
Yes. And so then I read that, and there was people saying, please don't joke about pronouns. It's transphobic to joke about pronouns. So they were chiding him for participating in a joke about
Enter Joe Rogan, the unofficial referee in the ongoing free speech wars. Rogan didn't hold back. He pointed out the glaring hypocrisy. For years, Jimmy Kimmel had thrived as the left's attack dog, roasting conservatives, Trump supporters, anyone who didn't toe the progressive line. He cheered when the mob went after his perceived enemies. But now, suddenly, the mob has turned its gaze on him, and all of a sudden, he's not thrilled. Rogan didn't sugarcoat it. You can't spend years championing censorship, silencing voices you dislike, and then act shocked when the same rules hit you. Free speech isn't selective. You either defend it for everyone, or you don't. Kimmel clearly chose a side. He mocked free speech advocates like Elon Musk, only to find the consequences landing squarely on his own doorstep, and Kimmel's fixation on Musk. It's far from a one-time clash. The late-night host has had a vendetta from the very beginning. Why? Because Musk dared to defy the Hollywood consensus. He argued something radical in Tinseltown terms. If you haven't committed a crime, your unpopular opinions shouldn't get you banned from Twitter. Simply expressing an idea shouldn't be grounds for erasure. To Kimmel, that was sacrilege. Night after night, he returned to the topic, monologue after monologue, treating Musk like his personal punching bag. It wasn't just commentary, it became a running obsession. A symbol of everything Kimmel wanted to criticize about the so-called reckless free speech crowd.
Elon is thought of as being, because he's willing to put people on with uncomfortable opinions, and he's releasing people that were banned from Twitter because of things that they had said. He's like, as long as you haven't done anything illegal, I'll let you back on.
Oh, yeah.
So he's doing a lot of that. So it's a lot of people are upset by that, because then they think, you know, well, you're platforming bigots and hateful people, and
But here's the twist. Musk didn't flinch. He doubled down, restoring banned voices to Twitter and standing firm on his principles. While the left lost its collective mind, everyday people started saying, you know what? At least this guy actually believes in free speech. Meanwhile, Kimmel and his late-night peers came across as petty, bitter, and let's be honest, a little envious. And we can't ignore Kimmel's own history. Today, he positions himself as a moral arbiter, but not so long ago, he was caught performing blackface skits. Those clips resurfaced, and suddenly he was in full damage control mode, apologizing, backpedaling, trying to showcase just how woke he had become. Joe Rogan argued that this moment may have broken him. After getting caught, Kimmel overcorrected, pivoting into a full-blown progressive crusader to safeguard his career. And it shows. Since then, he's been on a relentless mission to prove he's one of the good ones. The problem? Even the tiniest misstep, a joke that slips through, can trigger his own side to turn on him, devouring him faster than he can react.
Had a real problem with Elon from the beginning of this thing, but it's like he's in this leftist thought bubble. He is in the most leftist thought bubble available, which is Hollywood. And, you know, and I think also, you know, he famously, there's some videos of him in blackface, and those came out, and he had apologized for them, and I think he took that hit and like really doubled down the other direction. I mean, that's just speculation, but he, you know, now is a guy that goes after people like Elon Musk.
Now, here's the bigger picture. Comedy itself is at stake. Joe Rogan, Rob Schneider, and others have weighed in, and they all make the same point: comedy is meant to push boundaries, to make us squirm, to challenge our assumptions. That's its purpose. The proper response to a bad joke, or even an offensive one, isn't censorship. It's better jokes, thoughtful critique, or simply choosing not to laugh. That's how free speech works. But Kimmel, along with much of Hollywood, has embraced the opposite. censorship, and now, ironically, that very censorship is suffocating comedy. Think about it. When was the last time a Jimmy Kimmel joke went viral purely because it was funny? Not political, not controversial, just funny. Hard to remember, right? That's because Kimmel's humor has transformed into lectures. And who tunes into late-night TV for lectures? Nobody. The result is predictable. Tanking ratings, sponsors walking away, and networks dropping his show. Case in point, 246 local stations refused to air Kimmel after one of his recent political rants. That's nearly unprecedented. For so many stations across the country to unanimously say, this has gone too far. It signals a real business problem. In television, advertisers are the true power brokers. When they leave, the show suffers or dies. And here's the kicker. Kimmel's show isn't just unpopular, it's actively misleading. Broadcast TV operates under licenses that exist to serve the public interest, spread misinformation, or push dangerous narratives, and you're failing that obligation. That's exactly what happened when Kimmel misrepresented facts about political movements and marginalized groups. Regulators had to step in, not to revoke his license, but to issue warnings and demand accountability. Yet Kimmel and his defenders spun it as a moral stand, ignoring that both stations and audiences had already spoken with their wallets in viewership. The lesson is crystal clear. If you build a career on free speech, comedy, and bold humor, then abandon all that for political clout, you're going to lose. Feed the censorship mob, and they'll eventually come for you. Put activism ahead of entertainment, and your audience walks away. That's exactly what has happened to Jimmy Kimmel. Today, Jimmy Kimmel is no longer just another late-night television host. He has become something bigger, though not in the way he might have hoped. He is now a living cautionary tale, a case study in what happens when a comedian trades authenticity and boldness for politics, and in doing so, loses the very foundation of what made him successful in the first place. Once celebrated for his audacity, his willingness to poke fun at everyone and everything, Kimmel has gradually transformed into a mouthpiece for one side of the political spectrum. And the irony, the very crowd he thought he was pleasing has begun to turn on him. But maybe, just maybe, there's a silver lining to all of this. His fall from comedic grace might serve as a wake-up call, not just to comedians, but to entertainers in general, and even to audiences who consume this content. Perhaps it forces everyone to reconsider the true value of free speech. The principle doesn't mean much if it only applies when it's convenient, or when it benefits the people we like. Free speech matters precisely because it's uncomfortable, messy, and often applied to people we disagree with or even dislike. The moment it becomes conditional, it ceases to be free speech at all. Comedy, at its core, thrives on freedom. It needs space to stretch, to breathe, to offend, to provoke, and to stir conversation. Strip comedy of its freedom, and what's left isn't humor, but propaganda dressed up with laugh tracks and applause signs. That's why Kimmel's trajectory is so telling. He's proof that hypocrisy always catches up to those who practice it. You can't mock free speech when it suits you and then cry foul when the very mob you empowered turns against you. Rogan nailed it. Schneider echoed it. They're not calling for cruelty or for reckless irresponsibility, they're calling for something far simpler. More speech, not less. More debate, not silence. More comedy, not ideological monologues. This moment forces us to ask bigger questions about the state of late-night comedy itself. Once upon a time, these shows were cultural Johnny Carson, David Letterman, Jay Leno, whatever you thought of them. Their goal was simple: make America laugh before bed. Their monologues poked fun at everyone, often in equal measure. They could roast presidents, celebrities, and cultural fads without being pigeonholed into one partisan camp. People tuned in for relief, not lectures. They wanted to end the day with levity, not division. Contrast that with today. Late night has become overtly political. Comedy is secondary, replaced with snarky commentary designed to score points with a particular ideological tribe. And while that may win applause in the studio, it alienates huge swaths of the country. When you alienate half your potential audience, the math doesn't lie, ratings fall, sponsors walk, and networks grow uneasy. That's not just bad for business, it's a betrayal of what comedy was always meant to be. Kimmel's situation lays this bare. His willingness to trade comedy for politics may have been applauded in the short term, but in the long run, it hollowed out his own brand. Viewers no longer come to him for belly laughs. They come, if they come at all, for partisan validation. And that's not sustainable. A comedian who forgets how to be funny is like a musician who forgets how to play. Eventually, people stop showing up. But this isn't just about one man's career. It's about the future of comedy as a whole. If comedians take Kimmel's path, prioritizing politics over humor, then late-night television will continue to lose its cultural relevance. Already, younger audiences aren't tuning in. They find their laughs on podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, and stand-up specials from comics who refuse to play it safe. Joe Rogan himself is a prime example. Whether you agree with him or not, his appeal comes from authenticity. He says what he thinks, unfiltered, without catering to a particular political line. That freedom resonates because it feels real. It feels human. It feels like comedy the way it was meant to be: messy, unpolished, and unpredictable. The question then becomes, can late-night comedy recover? Or has it already passed the point of no return? If the current formula continues, lectures disguised as monologues, applause for virtue signaling instead of punchlines, then it risks fading into irrelevance. But there's still hope. Audiences are hungry for genuine laughter. They crave honesty, even when it stings. They don't want another pundit. They want a comedian. If someone steps up and remembers that the job isn't to preach but to entertain, there's still room for a comeback. And that's why Kimmel's downfall may not just be tragic, it could be instructive. His story can serve as a warning to other comedians. Don't abandon the craft in pursuit of political clout. Don't confuse applause for agreement with actual laughter. Don't trade in authenticity for short-term approval, because the moment you do, you stop being a comedian and start being a propagandist, and audiences, sooner or later, will notice the difference. There's also a lesson here for viewers. We, too, have a role to play. If audiences reward censorship by punishing edgy comedians and celebrating only safe jokes, then we contribute to the problem. If we want a culture where comedy thrives, we need to defend it even when the joke isn't to our taste, or even when it stings a little. Because that's the deal with free speech. It's not always comfortable, and it's not always pretty, but it's essential. Without it, comedy becomes bland, predictable, and forgettable. So where does this leave Jimmy Kimmel? In many ways, he's boxed himself in. To regain his credibility as a comedian, he'd have to shed the partisan armor and take risks again. But doing so would alienate the audience he's cultivated for years. Stay the course though, and he risks further irrelevance, losing not just viewers but the respect of the comedic community itself. It's a lose-lose situation, one entirely of his own making. But there's another way to look at it. Maybe Kimmel's career trajectory doesn't need to be seen as a failure but as a cultural inflection point. Maybe it will inspire other comedians to avoid the same pitfalls, to remember that comedy works best when it's fearless, universal, and untethered from political orthodoxy. Maybe it reminds us, all performers and audiences alike, that free speech is not optional, and that hypocrisy, no matter how carefully managed, will always catch up. So let me leave you with this. Did Jimmy Kimmel dig his own grave? Or was this inevitable from the moment he swapped comedy for politics? Can late-night comedy ever truly recover? Or has it permanently morphed into just another arm of partisan messaging? More importantly, what do you think comedy should be in today's world, an echo chamber, or a place where everyone and everything is fair game? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I want to hear your take. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next breakdown. Trust me, you're going to want to be here when we unpack the next cultural clash. Because if there's one thing Jimmy Kimmel has taught us, it's this: comedy without courage isn't comedy at all.